The first thing my mother handed me at my sister's rehearsal dinner was not a hug. It was a laminated meal pass on a black lanyard that said, "Vendor Meal, Service Hall," in block letters. Then she leaned in close enough for me to smell her perfume and said, "Use the side entrance, okay? And don't get in the family photos. The bride's people are already stressed." I just stood there holding that stupid badge while a teenage host in a white shirt smiled at me like I was part of the catering staff. My sister was 20 feet away under string lights, laughing with her fiancé's cousins, and when she saw the badge around my neck, she looked away so fast it was almost funny. Almost. I wish I could say that was the moment I turned around and left, but that would make me sound smarter than I was. The truth is, I'd already swallowed so much from them by then that one more humiliating little downgrade fit right into the old slot. In my family, I was never the daughter you celebrated. I was the daughter you used. I was the one who knew how to fix the card reader when the diner froze in the middle of Sunday breakfast rush. I was the one who stayed late to scrub grease traps because my father's back hurt and my mother was too busy doing the books, which usually meant smoking behind the dumpster with one of the waitresses and complaining about money. My younger sister Emily was the soft one, the sparkling one, the one who got called our girl in front of customers. I was just there, useful, steady, the person you yelled for when the ice machine overflowed, or the pie order got messed up, or the cook quit before the county fair weekend. My mother had a line she used all the time, always with this flat little shrug like she was explaining the weather. "You're not the one we worry about." For years, I took that as a compliment. It took me a long time to hear what it really meant. It meant nobody was coming for me. It meant if something was heavy, it was already mine. The rehearsal dinner was at a restored mill outside town, the kind of place with brick walls, candles in hurricane glass, and expensive flowers trying very hard to look effortless. I should not have been there at all. I had not been home in 11 years, not for Christmas, not for funerals, not even when the diner changed signs and my father sent a photo through my aunt with a message that said, "Thought you'd want to see." I lived 2 states away now. I had my own business, my own apartment, my own friends who knew me as Lena because I'd started using my middle name at 19 and never really went back. I made wedding cakes and plated dessert tables for hotels and private events, which would have made my mother laugh if she hadn't been so busy pretending I was unstable for half my life. She told people I was drifty. That was her favorite word after I left. Drifty. Like I hadn't been thrown out at 17 in the rain with a backpack and a pair of non-slip diner shoes. Like I'd just floated off because I was hard to pin down. 3 weeks before the wedding, she called me for the first time in years. Not texted, called. Her voice came thin and syrupy through the phone. "Emily really wants a peaceful weekend," she said. "No old ugliness. She's under pressure, and frankly, we could use your professionalism." Then, after a pause, she added, "You always were the one who could keep things from falling apart." That sentence went through me like a key in an old lock. I hated that it still worked. I hated that some part of me still wanted, after all that time, to walk into a room and have one of them look relieved I was there. So I came early, which was the first mistake. I came because the pastry subcontractor had backed out, because my mother said the venue was scrambling, because my sister's future mother-in-law was already making comments, and because apparently, even after more than a decade, I was still the emergency contact for a family that did not know how to say my name without also assigning me a task. By 5 o'clock, I had already fixed a collapsing macaron tower, repiped 12 buttercream rosettes, found out the espresso service was plugged into the wrong circuit, and quietly moved the gluten-free desserts away from a tray of flour-dusted cookies before somebody's aunt wound up in an ambulance. Nobody introduced me. Nobody said, "This is my daughter," or "This is my sister." Staff kept asking if I was with the dessert vendor, and my mother never corrected them. Once, near the bar, I heard one of Emily's bridesmaids ask who I was. Emily smiled without looking at me and said, "Oh, she's helping us out." That was all. Not even a name. Helping us out. Like I had blown in with the rental chairs. The thing is, that kind of erasure lands hardest when it sounds casual. If someone screams at you, at least the wound has edges. This was cleaner than that. It was being edited out in real time by people who knew exactly where to cut. I was in the service hall checking place cards against dietary notes when the venue coordinator came over with a clipboard and said, "Your family just needs one more thing. The bride wants the old diner pie server on the groom's cake table for a nostalgia touch. Cute idea, honestly. Did you bring it?" For a second, I just stared at her. The old silver pie server had belonged to my grandmother. It had a bent handle and a tiny engraved daisy near the neck from where she dropped it sometime in the 70s. It was the one thing I had taken the night I left, because it was in my backpack with my knife roll, and I didn't realize it until later. No one had mentioned it in 11 years. Not once. I said, probably too flat, "No, I didn't bring family heirlooms to an event I was invited to through the loading dock." The coordinator blinked, embarrassed, and started apologizing, but she didn't need to. I already knew what that request meant. My mother hadn't called me because Emily wanted peace. She called because they needed my hands, my memory, and maybe one more piece of family history they thought they still had the right to reach into me and take. Then, while I was still standing there with that vendor badge tapping against my ribs, my father walked into the service hall carrying a cardboard pastry box from our old diner, set it on the stainless prep table, and said, without hello, "We need to talk about what really happened the night you left." My father had gone softer around the middle and harder in the face. That was my first thought. The second was that he still knew how to enter a room like he owned the air in it. Even in a service corridor with bus tubs stacked by the wall and heat rolling out of the kitchen doors, he carried himself like the person who got to define what counted. He pushed the pastry box toward me and rested his hand on top of it. "Not now," I said. "Then when?" he asked. He did not sound angry. That would have been easier. He sounded tired and irritated, like I was making bad timing out of something inconvenient and long overdue. "You come back after all these years. You wear that look on your face, and you think maybe there isn't something to say?" I almost laughed at that. Wear that look. As if the problem between us was my expression. I looked at the box because I didn't want to look at him. It had the old logo on it, red script, Marlowe's Diner. My grandmother named it when the highway still brought people through town. By the time I was 10, I could fold takeout boxes faster than some of the waitresses. At 12, I knew the pie rotation, the truck delivery schedule, which regulars tipped in cash, and how to keep my father from snapping at the breakfast crowd if the grill man called out. People love to romanticize family businesses, like everybody's shoulder brushing in a warm kitchen automatically means love. Ours ran on debt, exhaustion, and whatever could be patched quietly before customers noticed. My mother did the front when she felt like it. Charm turned up bright. Emily floated through at the exact hours people could admire her. She refilled sugar caddies, smiled at old men, wore lipstick too young, and got called a natural. I was the part that made everything work. I did prep, I covered shifts, I cleaned the slicer. If the freezer alarm went off at 1 a.m, my father didn't wake Emily. He shook my shoulder and said, "Get up, You're useful. That word sat in my life like a brick. Useful was what you called a wrench. Useful was not what you called a daughter, unless you meant not much else. It got worse when Emily got old enough to understand the value of softness in our house. She was 3 years younger and pretty in a way that made people speak gently without even realizing they were doing it. She cried easily, but not always honestly. I don't mean she was some cartoon little monster from the cradle. I mean, she learned the system before I did. If she forgot an order, somebody else was riding her too hard. If I forgot something, it meant I was distracted or difficult or developing that attitude. Emily liked to stand at the register and call out little things in that light voice of hers. Lena left the whipped cream out. Lena snapped at table 6. Lena said she shouldn't have to cover my shift just because I have plans. Sometimes those things were true. Sometimes they weren't. It almost didn't matter. My parents were never looking for facts. They were looking for the explanation that preserved the shape of the family they preferred. Emily was the bright one. I was the one who could take the hit. By 16, I had gotten good at making whole sections of myself invisible. I stopped correcting people when they forgot I'd baked the pies they praised. I stopped expecting birthdays to be about me. I stopped bringing my report cards home because my father would glance at the A's and ask whether I could close Saturday because Shirley's husband had the flu. The only place I felt like a real person was in the bakery classroom at the vocational center 30 miles away. I got there on a scholarship and a teacher who liked me enough to write extra recommendation letters without making a big deal of it. Chef Torres smelled like coffee and flour and had a way of looking over your shoulder that made you stand straighter without feeling small. He was the first adult who ever watched me work and said, "You're not just competent, you have taste." I thought about that sentence for weeks. I still do sometimes. Taste. Not endurance, not usefulness. Taste. The letter came in April of my senior year. Thin white envelope, embossed crest, my name typed clean across the front. I remember every stupid detail because that's how shock works. The way the paper was a little warmer where the mailman had left it on the stainless counter near the pass. The grease spot near the corner from my own thumb because I'd been slicing lemons. The way Chef Torres had already warned me to check my mail that week, and I was so scared to hope that my hands went numb before I even opened it. It was an acceptance letter to a culinary institute in Providence with a partial scholarship and a summer placement program. Not enough money to make it easy, but enough to make it possible. I didn't tell anyone for 6 whole hours. I folded the letter into my bag and worked the dinner shift with my heart punching around in my chest because I wanted one clean, private stretch of being happy before the family got their hands on it. I should have kept it private longer. That night I told my mother first because she was alone by the coffee station, counting tips into little paper bands. She read the letter with her lips pressed together and said, "Rhode Island," like I had announced I'd joined a circus. Then she asked what tuition would still cost after the scholarship. Then she asked who would cover my morning prep if I left in August. Not congratulations, not wow, not even let me think, just logistics. I told myself that was fine. She was practical. She needed time. My father came in 10 minutes later, read the letter, and said, "You're not moving across the country to play pastry chef while this place bleeds." He said play. That was the first crack. Emily got home from her friend's house 20 minutes after that, found all 3 of us in the kitchen, and somehow by the end of the night she was crying because apparently my leaving would abandon the family right before wedding season and county fair traffic. Wedding season. That word makes me sick now. Even then, I could hear how absurd it was. I was 17. I had one chance at the thing I was actually good at, and somehow the conversation had turned into how selfish I was for wanting more than fryer grease and broken booths. A week later, the letter disappeared. Then $5,800 from the Fair Week cash envelope disappeared too. And in my family, those two things somehow became the same story. The cash envelope lived in the same place every Fair Week, tucked under the receipt spindle in the office, because my father did not trust banks after hours and did not trust the teenage night manager at all. Everybody knew that. That was part of why what happened next landed so cleanly. On Tuesday morning, the envelope was gone. By Tuesday afternoon, my culinary school letter was gone too. I got called off prep and into the office with my father, my mother, and Emily already in there. My mother was standing with her arms folded tight, like she was the injured party in all this. Emily was crying into a wad of napkins. My father did not tell me to sit. He just said, "Do not lie to me twice in one day." I remember looking from face to face and realizing, before anyone explained anything, that they had already decided what happened. The room smelled like old coffee and lemon degreaser. There was a fresh crack in the office window where somebody had slammed it too hard the week before. I stared at that crack while my father told me the cash was missing, and my mother said my acceptance letter had mysteriously vanished from the drawer where she had put it for safekeeping. Then Emily said, very softly, "I saw Lena in the office after close." That was the whole case. No one asked why I would steal the exact amount they all knew I couldn't possibly hide. No one asked why I would steal my own letter, too. Emily said she saw me near the office, and that was apparently enough to flatten every other fact in the room. I told them I had come in to get the tape gun because the pie boxes had run out up front. That was true. I said my letter had been in my bag. That was also true. My father asked where the bag was now. I said in my room. He sent my mother to check. She came back holding it by the strap, empty, zipper open like a mouth. "Nothing," she said. She sounded almost relieved. That detail bothered me later. At the time, I was too panicked to catch it properly. I just kept trying to explain in a way that made sense to me and clearly meant nothing to anyone else. I said stealing the money would be stupid. I said taking my own acceptance letter made even less sense. I said maybe the envelope had been misplaced. My father hit the desk with the flat of his hand and told me not to insult him. Emily cried harder. My mother sat down and pressed her fingers to her forehead like I had given her a migraine on purpose. Then she said the sentence I think actually split my life in half. Every time something good tries to happen in this family, you make it about what you want. I can still feel how blank that made me. Not angry at first, just blank. Because I had spent years making myself smaller inside that house. Smaller needs, smaller reactions, smaller plans. And still somehow I had become the threat. I looked at Emily then, really looked at her, and she would not meet my eyes. That was the first moment I knew, not suspected, knew. The missing letter had not floated away. The money had not walked off. Emily had done something, maybe not all of it alone, but enough. I said her name once, just that, Emily. She shook her head before I even asked the question. "Don't," she said, and started crying in this breathy, broken way that always made my mother go feral. My father told me I had until the dinner rush to tell the truth. I asked what truth he wanted, and he said, "The one where you stop acting like you're above the family that feeds you." That was another poison line in our house. Above the family. Anything I wanted that did not directly serve them got translated into arrogance. I did what stupid kids do when they still think innocence behaves like proof. I went upstairs, tore my room apart, checked under the bed, inside my textbooks, through the dirty laundry basket, as if the letter and the money might reappear if I searched hard enough. I found one thing, though. Not the letter. A scrap of cream paper in the trash by Emily's vanity, with the edge of the school crest still visible, and part of my own last name. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit down. I took it downstairs like it was DNA evidence in a murder case. I really did. I walked into the kitchen holding that tiny torn piece between two fingers and said, "This was in her room." My mother barely looked at it. Emily took one glance, then covered her face and whispered, "She planted that." My father turned on me with this disgust I had never seen that naked before. "You tear up your own letter, then go through your sister's trash to frame her?" he said. He said it with such certainty that for one weird second, I wondered if I had lost my mind. That was the real damage of living in a system like that. It did not just make you unheard. It made reality feel movable. By the end of the dinner shift, my father had made his decision, not because new information came in, because he was done being inconvenienced by the possibility that he was wrong. He waited until customers cleared and the neon open sign hummed in the front window against the dark. Then he told me I was not welcome under his roof if I was going to steal from the business and poison the house against my sister. My mother said maybe a few nights somewhere else would help me reset. That was her version of mercy. Emily stood behind them in one of my sweaters, the blue one with the stretched cuffs, and kept staring at the floor. I packed in 15 minutes because humiliation is faster than grief. 2 pairs of jeans, kitchen shoes, a chef's knife roll, the bent silver pie server from my grandmother because it happened to be in the top drawer where I kept recipe cards, and the $23 from the coffee tin I'd been saving. I left the scholarship brochure on the bed because it felt too stupidly hopeful to carry. When I came downstairs, my father opened the back door and said, "If you walk out like this, don't come back expecting a rescue." Not goodbye. Not call if you need anything. Just that. A warning dressed up as principal. I went to the bus depot 2 towns over and slept sitting up under a TV bolted in a corner playing a home renovation show with the sound off. At 6 a.m, I called the only adult I could think of who might not hang up on me. Chef Torres answered on the second ring. I tried to say I was sorry for calling early, but I started crying so hard I couldn't get the sentence out. He didn't ask for the polished version. He just said, "Where are you?" I told him. There was a pause, then the sound of keys. "Stay there," he said. "And Lena, bring everything with you. This may not be a one-night problem." He was right. And I found that out before noon when my mother left me a voicemail that I listened to on the curb outside the vocational center. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Your father spoke to the sheriff informally," she said. "No charges yet. Don't make us take it further. If that money appears, maybe there's a way to keep this private." That was when I understood they were not just blaming me. They were building a version of me they planned to keep. My father kept his hand on that pastry box like it might get up and run. Then he said, very quietly, "Your mother found the money the next morning." For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard him. The kitchen noise behind us went watery and far away. A dishwasher rack slammed somewhere down the hall. Somebody laughed in the bar. I just stared at him and waited for the sentence to rearrange itself into something less monstrous. It never did. Found it where? I asked. My voice came out thin and flat, like I was speaking around a cracked tooth. He looked past me, not at me, in one of Emily's church tote bags, stuffed down beside a cardigan. He rubbed his mouth with the side of his thumb. Your mother said Emily must have panicked. Said she probably meant to put it back. Said the letter was in there too, torn up. I don't know what my face did. I know my hands went cold so fast the meal pass slid against my wrist. And you let me leave anyway, I said. He flinched at that, but only a little. It had already gone too far, he said. People had heard things. The sheriff had been mentioned. Your mother said dragging you back in would only make it worse. I laughed then, one short, ugly sound. Worse for who? He did not answer. He didn't need to. The answer had been running my family longer than either of us ever admitted. Worse for the diner. Worse for their standing. Worse for Emily. Worse for everybody except the kid sleeping upright on a plastic bus station bench because her parents would rather preserve the shape of a lie than crawl after her with the truth. I did not go back after that morning. Chef Torres took one look at me on the curb outside the vocational center and did the kindest thing anybody had done for me up to that point, which was not ask me to make my pain sound reasonable. He drove me to his sister Marisol's bakery on the south side and told her I needed somewhere to land for a while. She looked me over, saw the knife roll, the swollen eyes, the diner shoes, and said, "You can help with laminated dough tomorrow if you know how to keep your hands cold." That was the interview. I slept in a narrow room over the bakery for 4 months and learned more in that kitchen than I had in 17 years at home. Not just technique, rhythm, standards, what it felt like when people corrected your work without trying to shrink you as a person. Marisol did not call me dramatic when I got overwhelmed. She did not call me selfish when I wanted something. She called me tired, talented, green, stubborn, occasionally a pain in the neck, but never broken. That mattered more than I knew how to say at the time. The Culinary Institute in Providence was gone by then. I missed the deadline, lost the housing slot, lost the nerve to keep begging the world for a life it had already slapped out of my hands once. I told myself a lot of practical things. I can work a year first. I can apply later. I can build from here. Some of that was true. Some of it was just grief wearing work boots. For a long time, I lived inside the old poison line anyway. If I'm useful enough, this will count as love. I nearly worked myself sick in those years because usefulness was still the language I trusted most. What changed me was not one big rescue. It was accumulation. Marisol putting my name on the chalkboard under pastry prep instead of just saying, "The girl upstairs made these." Chef Torres sending me job postings I was too scared to apply for. A hotel chef in Hartford tasting a tart I made and asking who trained me. My first apartment with a window over an alley and a radiator that clanked like it was haunted. Changing my paperwork to Lena because hearing my first name out loud still made me brace. I built a life the slow way, by invoices, by burns on my forearms, by showing up. A few years in, I started doing dessert design for private events because brides were willing to pay disgusting amounts of money for flowers made of sugar if you could keep your head while everyone around you lost theirs. I got good. Better than good, actually. Good enough that venues started asking for me by name, and not my family name either. Mine. The one I chose to stand in. I might have gone on the rest of my life with the old story sealed off if Ruth Keller hadn't found me outside a hotel loading dock 8 years after I left home. Ruth used to deliver flour and canned fruit to the diner in a box truck with a busted radio and peppermint wrappers all over the dash. She recognized me before I recognized her. "You're Marlowe's older girl," she said, then corrected herself. "No, sorry, you're Lena now." We got coffee after my shift, and that was when she told me she'd heard my mother and father fighting in the diner kitchen at dawn, the morning after I was thrown out. "Your mother found the money. Your father said it was too late to chase me. Your mother said maybe I needed to learn what happened when I made everything harder." Ruth had repeated those lines to herself for years because, as she put it, some things rot in your ears if you don't spit them back out someday. That was the moment the story inside me changed. Up until then, I had told myself they made a terrible mistake and then got stubborn. Ugly, yes, but human. What Ruth gave me was worse. They had a chance to stop it when the lie was still fresh enough to break. They chose not to. Not because they thought I was guilty, because by then, admitting it would have cost them more than losing me. So when my mother called about Emily's wedding, I did not come because I believed in reunion. I came because I was tired of being haunted by a family that still thought silence belonged to them. I came because Marisol, who has always had better instincts than I do when blood is involved, said, "If you go, go as yourself, not as their cleanup crew." I thought I could do that. I really did. But standing there in the service hall with that vendor lanyard around my neck and my father finally admitting what they had known all along, I could feel the old trap trying to close anyway. He pushed the pastry box another inch toward me and said, "I'm telling you now because tonight cannot turn into a scene. Thomas's family doesn't know the whole story. Emily's future in-laws are very particular people. If this gets messy, it will follow them." There it was. Not remorse, not repair. Image management with a gray head and tired eyes. He had not hunted me down in the kitchen to give me back the truth. He had come to make sure I handled it quietly, the way I used to handle everything for them. I looked at the box, then at him. "What's in there?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough to tell me I was not going to like the answer. Inside the pastry box was the bent silver pie server and a folded index card in my mother's handwriting. The server had been polished badly, enough that the engraved daisy looked blurred. The card said, "For the memory table, please place before guests enter." No please in the real sense. No acknowledgement that it was mine because it had become mine the second I left with it and nobody came after me. Just a task, written like I was back at the diner and she was pinning a side work list by the register. My father said, "Your mother thought it would mean something to have Nana represented." I looked at the card again. Represented. That was the word people use when they want the feeling of family without having to deal with the actual person holding it together. "So that's why I'm here?" I asked. "To bring back the right props?" He opened his mouth, closed it, and did that little exhale he used to do when he wanted credit for being trapped by circumstances he helped create. "We invited you because it seemed time," he said. "And because you know events. Emily's overwhelmed." There it was again. Same old hierarchy, just wearing wedding clothes now. Emily overwhelmed. Me operational. Before I could answer, one of the venue servers came through the hall carrying a tray of untouched salads and asked if anyone knew why table 7 had no vegan entree count attached. Then the coordinator appeared right behind him, pale and sweating through her blazer. "We have a problem," she said to nobody and everybody. "The groom's mother is saying the dessert display looks unfinished, and the florist is furious because someone moved the candles. Also, the band wants to load early, and the sweetheart table linens are wrong." My father turned toward me on instinct. He really did. Didn't even think about it. His eyes just landed on me with that old expectation, like if a room started leaning, my body should get under it. "Can you just—" he started. I laughed again, except this time it came out meaner. "Can I just what? Save it?" He lowered his voice. "Not here." That sentence used to work on me too. Not here. Not in front of people. Not where the truth might embarrass the ones doing the damage. I set the pastry box down on the prep table and said, "You do not get to tell me where the truth is inconvenient." That was when Emily came into the service hall, still in silk, still perfect from the front if you ignored her mouth. Brides can look beautiful and terrified at the same time. She stopped cold when she saw the box, the server, my father's face. "Why are you back here?" she asked me, which was funny because I'd been back there all night, just in the exact place she preferred me. "Dad," she said sharply, "what did you say?" He did not answer fast enough. Her gaze dropped to the index card, then to the pie server, and I watched the color leave her. "You weren't supposed to bring that out yet," she said. And there it was again, that old instinct to manage sequence. Not whether something should be said, only whether it was being said in the wrong order. "You really haven't changed," I told her. "You still think timing is morality." She flinched. My father muttered my name like a warning. Emily took 2 quick steps toward me and lowered her voice. "Please do not do this tonight." That might have landed if she had said anything remotely honest before it. If she had started with, "I know what I did," or "I know why you left," or even, "I don't deserve to ask." Instead, she reached straight for the old family script. "Thomas's parents think we come from a stable home," she said. "His mother already worries my family is too loud. If this blows up here, you won't just hurt me." You won't just hurt me. Not, "I hurt you first." Not, "I've been lying for 11 years. Just another request that I carry the ugly part somewhere private, so she could keep the pretty version upright a few hours longer. I might still have walked out then. I think I would have, honestly. Cold exit, let them rot inside their own setup. But the correction came the way real ones usually do, sideways, through logistics and the wrong witness at the wrong moment. Ruth Keller was standing in the open service door with a rolling rack of backup dessert plates from the supplier because the venue had under-ordered. I had asked for the emergency drop earlier in the afternoon and didn't know they'd sent her. She took in the room in one sweep, the box, my face, Emily in bridal silk, my father looking like a man trying to hold water in his hands. "Well," Ruth said, "this feels familiar." Nobody in my family had seen her in years, but they recognized her instantly. My mother, who had just entered behind Emily with 2 cousins and a face full of fake concern, actually stopped walking. Ruth set the brake on the rolling rack and looked straight at my mother. "Patricia, you still like waiting until the room is busy before you ask other people to clean up your mess?" My mother did what practiced people do under sudden light. She smiled. "Ruth, this is hardly the place." Ruth shrugged. "Funny, that's what Richard said in the kitchen the morning after you found the fare cash in Emily's tote bag." My father shut his eyes. Just once. Tiny movement, but I saw it. My mother did not blink. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Sure you do," Ruth said. "You said the older girl had always been too proud and maybe a hard lesson would settle her." I remember because I went back to my truck and sat there for 10 minutes, wondering what kind of mother says that with her apron still on. One of the cousins made a choking little noise. Emily's face had gone past pale now, into something uglier and more real. Panic, yes, but also recognition that a witness existed outside the family story. Not rumor, not my word against hers. Somebody who had heard enough at the time to carry it all these years. At the exact wrong moment for everyone except me, the venue owner walked in with Thomas's mother and the coordinator because, apparently, the linen problem had reached executive level. I knew the owner, Nora Patel, professionally. I'd done 3 events for her hotel group last winter. She took one look at me and said, "Lena?" I was told the dessert rescue was being handled by outside staff, not that our preferred pastry director was back here being cornered by the bride's family. The room changed on that sentence. You could feel it. Thomas's mother, who had barely looked at me all night because she thought I was hired help, turned fully toward me. Nora kept going because she is one of those people who refuses to step over a live wire and call it etiquette. "If there is an issue involving my vendor team, it becomes my issue," she said. "And if there's an issue involving harassment in a service corridor on wedding night, it definitely becomes my issue." My mother started to protest, all velvet and offense, but the coordinator cut in and said, very nervously, "Mrs. Marlowe, with respect, Ms. Vale has been the only reason this event is still on schedule." Ms. Vale, my chosen name, my current work, my actual place in the room. I saw Thomas's mother process that, then look at Emily, then at the pie server, then back at me. I didn't need to speak yet. For once, the truth was walking into the room wearing other people's mouths. Then Emily did what she had always done when the lie started losing oxygen. She cried and reached for me in front of witnesses. Emily reached for my hand like we were sisters in one of those wedding photos people keep on mantles for 20 years. Her eyes were wet, lashes sticking together, voice shaking in a way that would have destroyed me once. "Please," she said, "please don't do this in front of them." That was the line. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I lied." Not, "You were right." Just another plea to keep the damage off the white tablecloths. I stepped back before she could touch me. "You keep saying do this like I'm the one who built it," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The whole hall had gone still in that ugly, listening way people get when they realize the story they were given is not the story they're standing in. My mother tried to gather herself into dignity. "This is a family misunderstanding," she said to Nora and Thomas's mother, and then, because she had always preferred my old name when she wanted to put me back in place, she added, "Olivia has always been emotional." I almost smiled at that. 11 years, and she still reached for the same cheap tool first. But this time it did not land where she wanted. Nora looked at her like she had just spilled wine on stone. Thomas's mother folded her arms and said, "Your daughter has been running this event all evening while wearing a vendor badge you apparently gave her. If this is your idea of family, I don't think the misunderstanding is on her side." Then Thomas himself came through the door from the courtyard, tie loosened, confusion all over his face. He looked from Emily to me to the room full of adults wearing expressions nobody wants at their rehearsal dinner. "What is going on?" he asked. Emily opened her mouth first. Of course she did. "She's upset about something from years ago," she said quickly. "She's always had this thing where she twists..." And that was as far as she got, because my father finally did one decent thing and ruined the sentence for her. "No," he said. Just that. One word, but it shut the room down harder than shouting would have. He looked sick. Gray around the mouth, shoulders caved, older than he had looked 5 minutes earlier. "She didn't twist anything," he said. "We threw her out, and she was innocent." My mother snapped his name under her breath, pure warning. But he kept going. Not brave, exactly. More like cornered by his own shame. "The money was found the next morning. Emily took it. She tore up a school letter, too. We knew. Her mother and I knew. Thomas stared at Emily like he had lost sight of the language she was speaking. Emily started crying in earnest then, not the polished version, the real ugly kind. "I was 17, she said. "I was scared." I looked at her and said, "You were 17 for 1 year. You had 11 more after that." That hurt her. Good. It was true. After that, the thing I had expected for years and somehow never pictured correctly happened in a very ordinary way. Nobody dramatic collapsed. No one begged on their knees. The lie just stopped working. Thomas stepped away from Emily, not far, but far enough that everybody saw it. His mother asked him quietly if he wanted a minute. My mother started crying, which on her looked less like grief and more like outrage finally deprived of a script. Ruth stood by the dessert rack with her jaw set, no triumph on her face, just the hard calm of somebody who had carried a rotten secret long enough. Nora turned to me and asked, professional and clear, "Lena, do you want me to remove you from this environment?" That question almost broke me more than anything else. Not because it was grand, because it was simple. Because someone asked what I wanted while the room was on fire. I took a breath and said, "No, but I am not here as family. If you want me to finish stabilizing the dessert display for your venue, I'll do that for you. After that, I'm leaving." Nora nodded once. Done. So that's what happened. I did not storm out in tears. I did not stay and pretend. I worked for 40 more minutes because the job in front of me belonged to my name, not theirs. I reset the candles my mother had blamed on the florist. I fixed the leaning sugar work. I had the kitchen send the vegan plates to table 7 before anyone complained twice. I did not look at my parents while I worked. I did not look at Emily either, though I could feel her watching me from the doorway, like she was trying to recognize somebody she had spent half her life insisting wasn't real. When I was done, I took off the vendor lanyard, laid it on top of the pastry box, and slid the bent silver pie server back beside it. "Keep your memory table," I said. "You people are very good at staging one." Then I walked out through the front entrance under the lights, not the loading dock, with Ruth on one side of me and Nora on the other. That mattered more than I can explain without making it sound prettier than it was. It wasn't pretty. It was just the first time I left one of my family's events through a door they hadn't chosen for me. There were consequences, but not the movie kind. Emily still got married the next day. I know because Ruth texted me a blurry photo of the church steps and wrote, "Looks like it happened." She and Thomas lasted 8 months. That part did not make me happy. It just felt inevitable. Lies that old do not stop at one person. My mother sent 3 emails in the week after the wedding, each one trying a different version of the same trick. One said she was sorry. One said she had done the best she could under pressure. One said families owe each other grace. I answered exactly one time. I told her grace is not the same thing as access, and guilt is not the same thing as repair. My father wrote once too, shorter, no excuses. He said he had sold the diner. He said every corner of it had started to feel like a witness. I believed that. I did not answer him either. Emily sent me a message on my business page because apparently she had been blocked everywhere else without realizing it. It said, "I know I don't deserve anything. I just need you to know I was ashamed every day." I read it. Then I archived it. Shame is not an apology. It is barely even a beginning. A year later, I catered a small wedding at a hotel in Boston. Nothing fancy, just 80 people, summer flowers, good light through the windows. When I checked in with the venue, the event captain handed me a black lanyard for vendor access. For half a second, my chest tightened. Then I looked down and saw my own company name printed beneath it in neat white letters. Vale Pastry Studio. Lead. Not helper, not family overflow, not the one who keeps things from falling apart while somebody else gets introduced. Lead. I clipped it on and walked in through the main doors because that event had booked me, not borrowed me. If you stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. And if it hit something in you, please like, share, and subscribe. Stories like this matter because a lot of people are still out there thinking the role they were assigned is the role they have to keep forever. And that just isn't true. I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been stuck in a family role that only worked for everyone else? Do you think forgiveness and access are two completely different things? And if someone tells the truth too late, is there still any real way back?